Well, we got Terry McMaster sitting in with us for a chat today. He is a U.S. Navy veteran. And welcome, Terry.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate having me.
Terry, could you give us a little background?
Sure. I've spent my whole life in Oregon and Washington. I was born in Salem, Oregon, 1948, which is a minute ago. And we lived in Oregon during most of my childhood. Ninth grade, we moved to Bellingham, Washington, where ultimately I graduated from high school. Family consisted of mom, dad, my younger sister and younger brother, and all of those folks are gone now. So, but yeah, I graduated from Bellingham High School in 1966. Before graduation, a couple of friends and I decided it'd be a good idea if we'd go ahead and join the military, because there was no other way we were going to get to college. It was primary driver.
Sure.
And so I ended up going to boot camp between my junior and senior year of high school.
Oh, really?
So
And was that a different enlistment plan?
it was actually the Navy Reserve at that time, and then I converted and ended up just regular Navy.
Okay.
But that wasn't until after basic and when I went back for my A school. But that was upon graduation in 1966.
And you went to basic
I went to basic in 65.
location.
San Diego.
I should have known that. Almost every Navy guy that comes in, I ask him, I'm going,
Yeah. Well, there's some East Coast outliers I know, but
Sure.
I was San Diego, just adjacent to Camp Pendleton, so I got to watch the Marines going through all their gyrations too.
Well, that must have been an inspiration.
Oh, it was.
Sure.
It confirmed that we made the right decision.
Yeah, I hear you talking.
So, yeah, after high school graduation, I had like 5 days off from school, and then I was in A school, gunner's mate, and went to SEER training directly following that. And November of '66, we went to beautiful Southeast Asia. Went in a never forget this stuff, just can't express it. A C-118, an really old aircraft,
Oh, yeah,
prop job that used as much oil as it did gas. And we had 5 stops along the way. It was 56 hours when we left San Francisco at 1 o'clock in the morning.
That was a trip.
Yeah, it was quite the ordeal. No seats, we were all on, sleeping on duffel bags and our brothers.
Sure, whoever was most comfy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we stopped in Hawaii was the first stop, and that was, we were just chasing dark all the way around the planet as it turned out, but we stopped there and got off the plane long enough to walk through a chow hall and grab a couple of sack lunches, and by the time we got back on, we were refueled and re-oiled and on our way again. We ultimately stopped in Wake, Guam, Japan. We got to Japan, they wouldn't let us off the plane because the Russians had already landed and they were allowed off the plane, and they wouldn't let us off the planes at the same time for apparent reasons. The next stop was Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam at roughly 1:30 in the morning, and we were greeted with the runway being mortared and attacked every time a plane came in. Apparently that was just a ritual. Not that they were extremely accurate, but it was enough to harass the pilots enough that planes didn't actually stop.
Doesn't give a new guy a whole lot of confidence.
No, not exactly. We threw our gear out, the plane's still rolling, and we departed. There was a deuce and a half driving along beside us. We threw our stuff into it. Once we were past the end of the runway, the plane had already turned around and it was gone. And once we got off the runway, all the firing stopped, and then we had to decide what we were supposed to do. Well, I was a member of the Inshore Undersea Warfare Group, which I think is a Navy catch-all phrase for you'll go anywhere and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we got there. We didn't have any supervisory personnel for the first 3 days. We had our company, 40 guys, and we didn't know where we were supposed to go. So we just chose the high ground. There was a hill adjacent to the old airway runway there, and so we got as close to that as we could in the deuce and a half, unloaded our gear, and went up and made a home on top of this hill just because it was the only high ground available.
That was the first good decision there.
Yeah, it was. And as it turned out, it ended up being a really good decision. There was an old underground French fortress up there that hadn't been occupied in over 60 years. The Viet Minh and the French, it was an old French fortress.
Right.
And it was full of sand, bugs, and other critters that we had to evict before we could occupy it.
Sure.
But we spent 2 days on top without even realizing that there were gun emplacements up there that were old and dilapidated, no guns on them anymore. But we could tell there was something there, but didn't realize that there was a whole underground network until like 2 days in. Then we started discovering the entrances, and it turned out to be a pretty nice home eventually.
Sure. Once you got kind of broke in.
Yeah, exactly. So we set up our initial base of operation there, and we were first of our kind. And our primary goal there was to provide security for the transport vessels and everybody coming in and out of the harbors there. Mm-hmm. The Inshore Undersea Warfare Group operated out of 5 basic bases: Cam Ranh, Vung Tau, Vung Road, and Trang Quyen Yan. And they all had the same basic tasks, which were provide security for harbors, rivers, inlets, that kind of thing, and transportation for special operations teams. So I operated heavily with SEAL Team 1 ultimately, but we didn't have a boat when we got there either. So no supervision, no boats, no way to actually carry out the objective.
Right.
So we established a base on the hill. The first one that we did with tents, those blew off into the bay the first night, so we knew that wasn't going to work. Discovered and did a clearing process of the tunnels, getting rid of some of the current occupants, and ultimately that base was semi-established and secure. It's where we first got introduced to Agent Orange. The hill that we were on was all jungle, and it's ironic that if you go into Google Earth today and pull up the same hill, it looks exactly the way it did the day we got there. It's all completely overgrown with jungle again.
So it recovered from
Completely. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Just
Yeah, because Agent Orange, normally that's scorched earth for 1,000 years.
Well, in this case it was scorched earth for 60, but it looks like it's all recovered very nicely.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of new little buildings there. I'm not sure what they are. Of course, after we left there, I think the Russians took over that harbor too.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that they ever did anything up there on that hill. But so ultimately, we had to establish a place for boats to go, and that was referred to as the market time base, which we had to go establish. So a team of 6 of us were assigned to go and coordinate with operating engineers personnel, identify a place to put the base. So first of all, we had to identify a place to live. Well, that was the hill. And then identify a place to put a base. So we're establishing all this stuff, and it was all relatively new.
Sure.
So we found a good spot for the Market Time base, which became the boat basin. Power generator ships came in. That was a game changer because now we could actually have a light bulb. And so gradually things got upgraded. But I was there for 2 tours. I went in November of '66 and got out June of '68 with an early out. And it was a short re-up conversation because they told me that I'd get any duty assignment I wanted. And I said,
Sure.
yeah, I will for 6 months, and then you're going to send me right back here, so no thank you. I've had quite enough.
So, first time around.
No. So the boat operations were, and I ended up on the boats and maintaining all the firearms and equipment and stuff associated with that.
Now, what type of watercraft did you guys operate?
2 36-foot LCPL, which utilized for insertion more often than not, and any place that it was too big to go, and a 36-foot boat doesn't have many limitations except draft, and 17-foot skimmers, Boston Whalers.
Mm-hmm.
Originally they came with 65 horse motors. We upgraded those to 85 horse, which made us a little less prone to shoreside altercations, which we had regularly.
Never too much power is never too much.
No.
When you want
Never.
to get fast.
The other thing that we did was check the bottoms of ships for anything that had been attached to them in the outer harbor before they were allowed to come in the inner harbor.
Sure.
And that was one of my primary duties as well, was actually diving down the hulls of boats as they came in ships and checking for any devices or illicit contraband that had been attached to them. Mm-hmm. One incident, the SS Pelican, which was a refinery support ship, got an 8-foot hole blown in it outside our harbor. It was one that was next to be checked the next morning as it came into the inner harbor, and it was got the hole blown in it that night outside the harbor. So checking those was always an adventure because we didn't have any control over parts of the day, because all the ship's captains, I don't think any of them ever spoke the same language. So you'd try to tell them to cut their props until we completed our hull search. Well, they didn't know how long that was apparently, because oftentimes you get blown out the back of that thing through that 10-foot brass prop.
Oh, wow.
That's exciting. So there were, that was the only ship that suffered damage during our watch there, but it was in that, like I say, the outer harbor before it got into our jurisdiction actually. So,
How many personnel crewed a vessel like that?
4 on an LCPL, 2 on a skimmer, unless we were transporting teams.
Now, when you're doing these underwater inspections that you're talking about there now, were all of you trained divers?
No.
No.
There were only 8 of us in total out of 40. So, and the way I got into this whole thing, I have to digress a little bit. After I completed A School and SEER training, my temporary duty assignment was San Francisco Officers Club lifeguard, which was really good duty.
I was going to say, not even near checking the bottom of a boat in Vietnam.
No, it was really good duty. There were lots of not single but available young ladies that frequented that pool. It was the officers' pool, and many of them were often.
We refer to those as distractions.
Exactly.
Lovely.
Yeah, indeed. But one afternoon, a fella came in, and obviously an officer, because that's what it was restricted to, and salt and pepper hair, but good shape, and he dove in the pool. He did a couple of laps, and it's an 80-meter pool, and he swam really well. And he jumped up at the other end and said, "There's nobody in here." He says, "Why don't you pace me a couple of laps?" Well, at the ripe old age of 18 and fresh off the Bellingham High School swim team, I thought, sure.
I'll give him a run for his money.
Yeah, I did. And I beat him by a half a body length, and he was 50-some years old, and I was 18. And
Good shape.
yeah, he was impressive. And so he, when he got out of the pool, he just said, "Come on over to the building number so-and-so and office number, and have a cup of coffee with me Monday." Yes, sir. So I did, and I went, and it had a gold emblem on the door for UDT. And when I walked in, the commander he had a sergeant outside, Marine sergeant, which I thought was strange, but said, "Oh, go on in, he expects you." So I went in, and he had 3 pieces of paper, and he just said, "Sign here, sign here, sign here, and we'll get you on the road." Well, it had nothing to do with a cup of coffee, but he was trying to sign me up for UDT training. But I signed, and then I ended up getting circumvented to the Inshore Undersea Warfare Group. It was a military miracle.
It's kind of like you're sent one way and somebody reached out, well.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we want these 3 guys, and they just handpicked and pulled.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up in the Inshore Undersea Warfare Group, and so that was somewhat convoluted, but that's how it happened. So
In the military, there's a lot of that convoluted.
yeah,
You know, you're trained for this, and all of a sudden you're.
indeed. So that's how I ended up there, and had enough adventures while we were there that it's caused me over time. My whole working career after I got out was in law enforcement, and that was by accident. But after I retired, I discovered when I had more time on my head and hands, that wasn't necessarily a good thing. So I had some things pop up out of my memory banks that I wasn't aware were even there. And that caused me to seek out some counsel. And originally, I got a hold of Wayne Ball.
Yeah.
And
I've met Wayne Ball before, great man.
wonderful fellow.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And he helped me a bunch, gave me some tools, and the biggest thing that I got out of that, and I ended up in a group as a result, was realizing that I wasn't the only one with this dog and pony show running around in my head, and so that was a gift, just to know that it wasn't just me. So Wayne ultimately retired, sold the business, and I'm not sure exactly who took over first, but I didn't care for it nearly as much, and the group got infused with a bunch of kids. Now granted, these kids had all done the same kind of things that we'd done, just under different circumstances in a different country and in sand instead of jungle, but it was different. And the group validity just lost some of its character for me. It was different when I was sitting there with a bunch of old Vietnam fellas, and not to take anything away from those that did the same stuff in different countries and,
Sure.
and 30 years later, but it lost some of the value for me.
Just don't have that same comfort level.
Exactly. Another thing that happened is I went to the CBOC out here one time for one counseling session, and there were women in the group. Well, that did it. I was not comfortable sharing with women regardless of their stature, and again, not to take anything away from their service, but
Sure.
I wasn't comfortable in that group, so I dropped all the counseling there for quite some time. And then about a year and a half ago, my oldest boy was a Desert Storm participant in the Army, came home with PTSD and a lot of the same earmarks that I found that I was suffering. He suffered a bit of a mental break, and a lot of folks are aware that there was a shootout here, and he was shot by law enforcement. He's recovered very nicely and doing very well.
That's great.
And I have to attribute a great deal of that to Central Washington Veterans Counseling, Heather Hill.
Yeah. Heather's a wonderful lady.
Yes, she is. And she's taking good care of me and mine. And
That's great.
so most recently, of course, the contract for them has been curtailed, which has a lot of us on. Anxiety levels are all up, I'll say that. They're doing their best to try to cover it, but I've also found that the vet center has reached out and said, oh, we're going to cover you and make sure that you still have everything that's available. And what they've sent me was a letter saying that there's going to be a new counselor on board, which is fine. But I've gone through all this stuff with 2 sets of counselors now for quite some time in great detail. Not sure I want to start all over again with somebody else. That's square one.
Yeah, that's a considerable.
It's huge.
Yes.
I don't need to necessarily revisit all this stuff again. I will if I have to, but
And it seems like sometimes the VA, they don't seem to be concerned about your comfort level or what it takes for you, the courage and just the inner strength, like you said, to go through it once is enough, but then twice, there's a certain point of.
yeah, there's no return on the investment at that point as
Right,
far as I'm
right.
concerned. But I'll play by the rules. I'm still able to see Heather every other week at this juncture, and that's fine. But yeah, they talk about being able to use technology instead of in-person interviews and in-person sessions. And I've done those kind of things before, and that doesn't appeal to me. You can't read the room, you can't read body language, you're not having that interpersonal reaction, there's something lost in that communication.
Talking to a machine is not like talking to a person.
No, it's not.
It's like that.
And a picture of a person isn't the same.
It's the same. It's the same thing. It's still a machine looking
Exactly.
at you. So.
So I'm not all enamored with that idea, but I've gotten off track here just a little bit. But yeah, we're very grateful for all the help we received, and everything's going swimmingly. We're doing
And
great.
hopefully the funding will get itself straightened out and get back, because there's, from what I understand, there's at least 100 veterans in the local area that are affected by this
Exactly.
budget shortfall.
And more in the wings that don't have any care.
That's right.
So yeah, it's a big issue, and I know part of the funding strategies and everything of places that are receiving far more funding have far less call for services. So I'm not sure exactly how well. I am sure that not always does the federal government figure out exactly what's best for everybody, and does it always make sense.
That's right.
That's just to be expected. doesn't make it any more palatable.
No, it doesn't make it right, so.
So, yeah, I'm just waiting for next steps there. But to digress a little bit, after I got out of the military, I was a bouncer in 3 taverns at the same time in Bellingham on State Street. It was very convenient because all 3 were adjacent to one another. They all hired me for $5 an hour, so I was making $15 an hour, all the beer I could drink and all the fights I wanted.
Life was good.
Which was perfect.
Life was good. Yeah, all right.
Well, that was relatively short-lived. I became a heavy equipment operator at Intalco Aluminum in Ferndale. Did that for 2.5 years. Discovered that I can't push the same button, pull the same lever every day.
For years and years.
Yeah, so I walked away from that job on a Friday afternoon, and a friend of mine called me that I hadn't spoken to in a couple of years and just asked what I was up to, and I told him, well, I have 2 kids, a pregnant wife, and I quit my job today. And he said, well, pack all your stuff up in 2 U-Hauls, you hook up to one and I'll get you with the other on Sunday. And I moved to Montesano, Washington. And Monday morning at 6 o'clock, I tried to figure out how to make a log truck go forward.
Another experience.
Exactly. 2 weeks after getting there, I was living with my wife, pregnant, 2 kids, my friend and his girlfriend in a little house in Montesano. 2 weeks after I got there and started work, they shut the woods down. So now I have no job, a pregnant wife, 2 kids, living with my friend. So I went to the employment office in Aberdeen to try to get some kind of benefits or something. And the first thing they did was give me a little pink card. I said, we'll give you benefits, but first you have to go check on this job. And they sent me to the Aberdeen Police Department, which I thought was pretty bizarre. I was a little bit of an outlaw back in the day. And they sent me, and so I went for the interview. And the chief of police there were 2 other guys that interviewed in the same room with me at the same time. And the chief just said, okay, you 2 can go, we'll be in touch, and you, and he pointed at me, stay. And he hired me as a jailer and dispatcher right there on the spot.
Well, that's a deal. Now you got a job.
Now I got a job, so I didn't get to draw unemployment benefits. I never did in all my life. So came close, but that was as close as I came. But so that started a career that the jailer and dispatcher thing was fine, but as I hung out with more law enforcement officers, I realized that they were probably better people than I thought, and they were a lot more fun than I thought. We fished and we hunted and we did law enforcement things, and I
Just normal people.
decided that was fun. And so I took the test the next time it came around, and I came out number 1. And the chief in Aberdeen just said, well, I'm not going to hire you in that position because then I have to replace the best jailer and dispatcher I've ever had. Well,
But there's a thing, you do too good of a job and
Yeah.
they won't let you go.
Aberdeen and Hoquiam had the same civil service commission. So I went across the street to Hoquiam, talked to Jay Barnes for about 5 minutes, and he just said, you're hired. And so I became a regular police officer and did a couple of years with Hoquiam PD. And that essentially started my law enforcement career, which I did for 30 years. I ended up here in Wenatchee, the Wenatchee Police Department in March of 1976. And in 19... I'm terrible with dates, and I don't have my social secretary, also known as my wife, here to straighten me out. But after 15 years here, I had back surgery, which precluded my ability to leap tall buildings in a single bound anymore. So I had to leave, so I retired prematurely from the police department here with medical. So for a brief time, I worked at a radio station, classy FM 105 and K-Heart radios here, and eventually my back got good enough that I thought maybe I could do something 8 hours a day. So I just thought about investigative opportunities, since I had a pretty good investigative background. And I contacted Labor and Industries, and everything's just happenstance for me, apparently. Like I said, I quit one job and get sent to go, a little pink card that said, here, go be a cop, so I did that. In this case, I called, and the supervisor for the investigations division of Labor and I happened to be at the service location. They said, you want to talk to her? So sure. And she said, can you come and see me? So I did, and she hired me on the spot as an investigator. I did it for a few months as a special investigator, and it soon became apparent to me that the investigations division could use a lot of improvement. I wrote a systematic series of letters to Olympia explaining why it was not part of the upper crust of investigative society, and ultimately they invited me to come and run it, so I did. I went to Olympia for 6 years and became the chief of investigations for Labor and Industries, and tried to make some improvements, and think we did successfully. Ultimately, my mother, who lived back here, when she became ill, and there was no one else to take care of her, so I asked them in Olympia if there was an opportunity to get back to this side of the mountains. I'd appreciate it. They created a position for me and paid for my move. I guess that's how badly they wanted me out of there. So got back here, worked a couple more years, and ultimately had another back surgery, and decided at that point that I didn't need to do anything else except what my wife told me, and go fish when I could.
Sure.
So that's where we are today.
That's good therapy. Well, too, and it sounds like your story, and I've heard it from a lot of people, and it's happened to myself, is that you think you got what you're going to be doing, and everything's going good, and all of a sudden, wham, it stops. And you're going, oh, woe is me. Yeah. And then it's not very long, and something better comes along. And you go, oh, well, okay. And then, after a couple of those, you're starting to think that, this is more than just coincidence. There might be some divine intervention or some type of intervention here that, and my father was always good with that. He said, don't ever get down about losing a job. Because there's more people that are wanting to work than what their jobs out there. And I mean, that was back in the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah.
And he said, if you lose a job, there's a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a better job, and there's somebody that's looking for you. You just got to get on your 2 feet, and you got to go out there, and you got to show that mug of yours, and you got to tell them what you do, or show them what you do.
Indeed.
And you just keep on and keep on going forward, and you're gonna come into something good. And if that ends, there's something better, and that is exactly what happened.
I gotta say, I've had an endless amount of wonderful intervention that I had no idea why these things were happening, but everything seemed to line up. And when I got into law enforcement, I got in time that I was part of the Left 1 retirement system. Well, Left 1, I'm 100% covered for medical for life. All my prescriptions are paid for, everything, which, that's a non-existent program anymore.
Another good thing.
Exactly.
Like you said, that it disappeared.
Yeah. So all of these things just kept falling in front of me, and they've been a blessing. So
I've had some
grateful.
people tell me sometimes it's better to be lucky than skillful.
Exactly.
If you're there at the right time and you're holding your mouth just right, well,
Yep.
Things might.
Good things can happen.
Well, that's great,
So,
Terry. Sounds like
was-
you lived and you continue to live an interesting life.
Indeed. Yeah, it's been joyous. Yeah, I make knives now as a hobby, so I get to spend time in my shop doing that.
Wow, good.
And like I say, fish when I can. I have way too many hobbies according to the size of my shop. It's full, always, so.
I was gonna say, there's never way too many hobbies. There's
No.
just hobbies I haven't quite got to yet.
Exactly,
So-
yeah. Well, my shelves are full, so.
So if you get distracted onto something other one day, well, that's fine, then you can just
I
kind of wander back and forth.
Exactly.
Kind of say is diversity is the color of life. You know, it'd be all black and white if we were just making wooden bowls or something like that, but yeah, it sounds like you really,
It's diverse. By the time you're tired of pounding on 2,000 degree steel, then it's time to work with bone or wood or something else too, or leather and make a sheath. So there's lots of diversity involved.
well too, and don't you find, I made wooden toys on a veteran service project out of here for 2 years.
Yeah.
For underprivileged kids and adopted kids.
Yeah.
I never had so much fun in my life.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah.
And it just, when you're doing that, that's all you're thinking about. You're not thinking about anything else. You're working with your hands, and it's such a, it's a real healing experience. I mean, you're in your own self, and it's very peaceful. It's very calm. Just as long as you don't stick your fingers in the bandsaw blade.
I taught another vet from the desert era how to make knives. And he's turned out to be a tremendous knife maker on his own. And
Yeah.
but we spent a lot of great time and weekends in my shop, not only talking about knives, but talking about life's adventures. And he's doing very well. And he also.
And there's another example of our generation
Mm-hmm.
communicating and making that bridge with the younger generation of veterans and young men. And you know, I was always blessed because my father was a combat veteran in the Second World War. My mother was a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother was an Army veteran. And so I was always around. My father would never talk about the war to us, to the family. But when he thought I was out of earshot and he was sitting down with some of his friends, they would talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, back then there was no post-traumatic stress. I think they called it shell shock or something like
Exactly.
that. And just the conversations between these men of faith, because my father was his country, his family, and his faith. Those are the three cornerstones of his life. You know, and when they would sit down, I would start to understand better about the things when he would talk and how his faith and these other men, how they had faced this type of adversity
Mm-hmm.
and still went forward and had families and had productive lives. And just, you know, a lot of it was their faith, and it was a thing, their faith, their family, and they loved their country. And
Well, that was something else that we touched on that I wanted to mention, that when I ended up in law enforcement, it was a perfect gift for the violence in me at the time, if you will. At the ripe old age of 18, like a lot of us were, I was subjected to things that most normal people aren't. And got introduced to a lot of dead people and a lot of chaotic and horrible scenes and all those things, which I won't go into detail about. But falling into law enforcement was just a continuation of that process. So for 30 years now I get to see more atrocity, more evil at the hands of men.
Sure.
And but it was such a natural fit. Like I said, don't like pushing the same button, pulling the same lever every day. Well, you go into law enforcement, you don't have a clue what's going to happen today, and adapt and move forward. So it was a good fit for me at the time, and it allowed me to grow and continue to improve skills and learn more.
Did you find in law enforcement that you had more control over doing positive things and making impact in people's lives than what you had in the military service?
Oh, very much so.
I mean, because
Yeah.
it's different, a different perspective, and there's a different mission per se, I guess.
You had more latitude in law enforcement about your direction and goals in given sets of circumstances. For the most part, you could expend as much energy into repairing or fixing a situation or a broken person, or it was always kind of a challenge to be able to communicate with anyone. You had to be able to communicate with doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, and everybody down the food chain to the bottom, and do it effectively. So the way that I might have a conversation with you is completely different than I would have with somebody else of lesser intellect. So challenge and growth, and it was a gift as far as learning more about people and how to deal with them, and that helped me too. So.
Well, and I could see that, I mean, your previous experiences in the military would be a very valuable resource and a treasure trove in your law enforcement, because you could almost like a comparative type situation where you could see in civilian life where something was occurring which was similar, not exact, but and you were talking about having more latitude than in the military. So now you have the tools and the experience and the knowledge as a law enforcement officer and your investigative skills, which you may have investigated this particular situation several times, or it may be the very first time.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, it's a challenge even when you're familiar with it, of how you're going to use your tools and integrate your skill and your tools and resources available that are in the community or mental health or whatever, versus just straight law enforcement, incarceration.
I was always very happy with the fact that I was able to talk more people into jail than I threw in.
Yes, there you go. Man, it's better to wrestle with them and just have them come along quietly, please.
Exactly. Come on, we'll get this straightened out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. So that was it was a rewarding career, and I'm grateful for all of it. So I think that's pretty much everything I've got.
So now you're doing time in the fishing boat and in the shop.
Exactly.
Living life and enjoying it.
If the wind will quit blowing long enough and the temperatures don't get too hot, I don't abide by that very well.
I was like to say, if there's blue sky and the creek ain't rising,
That's right.
life is good.
Yes, it is.
Terry, it's just been an absolute pleasure sitting down with you and having this chat.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it, and that'll be it.